Two giant rhino-like monsters known as the Great Horned Ones appear in a quiet mountainous region, striking fear into the hearts of two figures who show signs of shock and panic. One of them wonders why these dangerous creatures are in this place before they decide to flee for their lives. As they flee, one of the Great Horned Ones appears before them and rushes at them in anger. Nearby, another carriage approaches the area carrying a group of adventurers. Suddenly, of them uses a skill called Guidance, which reveals the presence of an entire herd of Great Horned One monsters. Thanks to this skill, the young man warns his traveling companions, an elderly man and woman, of the herd in their path, suggesting they take a longer alternative route to ensure their safety. The woman expresses her deep gratitude to him, affirming that the decision to hire him as a guide was the right one, especially with the recent increase in monster sightings in the area. The young man explains that his guidance skill is what enables him to protect travelers and secure their path. Despite her husband's thanks, the older man, who appears to be the merchant, shouts at her angrily and demands that she not thank the young man. The merchant questions the young man's credibility, wondering if the monsters really exist, and dismisses the guidance skill as nonsense, accusing the young man of making up lies. The young man thinks to himself that this reaction is typical as his skill prevents danger before it happens, so people never see the real threat he saves them from. Meanwhile, the young man is harassed by another adventurer who grabs him and insults him, calling him the useless skill holder. The scene shifts to a background narrative about this world where magic stones extracted from dungeons are used in everything. They are the source of energy to light cities and the raw material for making weapons and armor essential for daily life. But these dungeons are teeming with monsters, making entering them a risky venture, which is why magic stones are so expensive. As a result, adventurers with combat skills that enable them to eliminate monsters are held in high esteem, while those with non-combat skills are looked down upon and treated like scum. After arriving safely in the city, the woman offers the boy his wages with a word of thanks, but her merchant husband angrily slaps his hand away, scattering the coins on the ground, and blames him for their delay, which allowed a rival trading company to reach the market before them. The merchant continues to shout, believing that the market customers have already finished their shopping, and calls the young man a coward and a fraud. The group of adventurers was watching the situation, and one of them commented that it would have been better if the merchant had given them the money instead of paying this fraud. But their leader, named Marcus, rejects this opinion, thinking that this merchant will be very successful today. Marcus reveals that he used his bird's eye skill out of curiosity to check the path the young man avoided, and he indeed saw a large herd of Great Horned One monsters there, which means that the rival merchants have not yet reached the city. After realizing that the young man's skill is real and powerful, Marcus approaches him, calling him by his name, Root. He then introduces himself as the leader of the Steel Moon Party and extends his hand, asking Root to help them clear a dungeon using his skill. Root stands stunned and bewildered by this unexpected request, wondering how his skills, which everyone considers useless, could be of any use to them. Marcus sat with Root at a table, and Root begins to explain Marcus's mission, explaining that many adventurers went to clear a new dungeon called the Emerald Dew Labyrinth, but none of them returned. He adds that a message arrived from someone inside stating that they had found a magic stone called the Tears of the Emerald Dew. Root deduces that people believe it is harder to get out of this dungeon than to get in, which Marcus confirms completely. Marcus points to Root, explaining that this is the situation where his guidance skill is most important. Root realizes that Marcus is right and that by using his skill, he will be able to find a safe way back. Marcus promises him a generous reward, offering him 30 gold pieces if they succeed in their mission. Root is stunned by the enormous amount, which is equivalent to half his annual salary, and immediately thinks about how this money will make his sister's life much easier. This thought triggers a painful memory from the past where a woman was scolding and slapping his sister, calling her useless trash. She then threatens to sell her if she doesn't make money, but Root stops her and asks her to stop bothering his sister. The woman rudely reminds them that she was the one who graciously took them in as orphans. Root begs for more time, promising to pay off the debt, but the woman issues her final threat. If the rent is not paid by the end of the month, she will sell his sister as a slave. The young Root fearfully accepts the deal, but he returns to hug his sister and reassure her, vowing that he will never let that happen. Root narrates that his younger sister, Rona, also has what is called a useless skill, and that their parents were killed when monsters poured out of a dungeon. The scene returns to the present inside the dungeon where the Steel Moon team fights the monsters with amazing skill. One of the team members yells at Root, ordering him to walk faster and stay behind them. Then Marcus sarcastically asks him if this is the first dungeon he has entered. Root apologizes to them and asks a young sorceress on the team if she is also a member of the Steel Moon team. The sorceress explains that she is also a beginner who was scouted in the city and that training beginners is part of the adventurer's duties. The sorceress expresses her concern that she will be a burden to them because it is her first time as well. Root smiles and reassures her that it is his first time as well, and they laugh together. Elsewhere in the dungeon, the Root adventurer continues to grumble, describing Root's skill as the skill of a coward who evades monsters and goes home. Marcus hears him and scolds him severely, stressing that he was the one who asked Root to join them, and explains that the return journey is the most dangerous part of any dungeon, especially when everyone's energy and magical abilities have been depleted. Marcus orders his teammate not to say things that would cast doubt on Root, and the adventurer immediately apologizes. Then Marcus turns to Root and apologizes on behalf of his team, assuring him that they are relying on him completely. Root feels relieved and thinks that if all adventurers were like Marcus, he could focus on his work in the dungeons without worry. The young sorceress shares the same feeling, expressing her happiness that Marcus is a good person, which Root agrees with. The group finally reaches a spacious room at the end of the dungeon where they find their target, the legendary magic stone, Tears of the Emerald Dew, glowing brightly. One of the team members comments on the immense mana emanating from it, while another dreams of the wealth they will gain from selling it. But as one of them reaches out to take the stone, Root's guidance skill suddenly activates, warning of imminent danger, and Root shouts for them to stop. Root warns them that if they take the magic stone, they will never be able to return. Marcus calmly asks what his skill has shown him, and Root explains that his vision is not entirely clear, but it indicates that the path behind them will collapse and block their return. After a moment of silence, Marcus exchanges a meaningful look with a dark-haired sorceress on his team. Surprisingly, the sorceress casts a mana drain spell on Rout and the novice sorceress, forcefully draining their energy, causing them to scream in pain and shock. The sorceress declares that this stolen energy will compensate for what the team has consumed, and that the real test begins now. At the same time, the sorceress casts a spell and uses all her energy in this next spell, a quick boost spell on Marcus and the other fighter. As Root holds the young sorceress who has lost consciousness, he asks them in shock what they are doing. Here, Marcus reveals his true plan. He explains that he knew from reports that the dungeon was full of traps that drained stamina and mana, so he had to devise a plan to overcome these traps. Therefore, he devised a plan that required a canary, which is Root, to warn them of the traps, and a mana tank, which is the novice sorceress, to recharge their magical power. He believed that, with these two, they could ensure the success of the mission. Root shouts at him, accusing him of deceiving them, and Marcus coldly apologizes, saying that he cannot waste any more time while his companion finally picks up the magic stone. Marcus's team prepares to leave. Marcus bids Root farewell and tells him that if he can survive, he will see him later. Then his companion sarcastically adds that any chance of survival has vanished for them, and the team's sorceress expressed her admiration for Marcus's acting skills. As they escape, the tunnel ceiling begins to collapse, and rocks fall and completely block the entrance, just as Root's skill had predicted. Root hears the novice sorceress's voice laughing, confirming that they have indeed abandoned them to their fate. After the entrance collapses, despair grips Root as he realizes he is trapped and cannot return, and thoughts of his sister Rona dominate his mind. In a moment of desperation, he pleads with his skill to guide him to a path of survival, and he activates guidance with all his might. The skill directs him towards a mysterious throne in the middle of the hall. Root is amazed at the presence of a throne in this place, and it gives him clear instructions. Destroy the throne and absorb the magic obsidian stone. At the throne, Root finds a black magic stone. The young sorceress awakens and expresses her astonishment at the existence of a black stone, explaining that magic stones are associated with the 5 great elements and that the existence of a black stone is impossible. Suddenly, place shakes and a huge green dragon emerges from under the rubble. The novice sorceress is shocked by the presence of a green dragon in this place, and it lets out a deafening roar. The dragon lunges at them. Root feels he must stay alive for his sister's sake and uses his skills to find a solution, but the system repeats the same message. To destroy the throne and absorb the magic stone, Root's resolve is renewed as he thinks of his sister, realizing that he must follow his skill's instructions to return to her alive. Despite his confusion about how to absorb the stone, the sorceress shouts at him to flee from the raging beast. The The sorceress told him that her skill would show them the way out. Root was thinking about the instructions of his skill. Root realizes that his skill has given them a slim chance of survival, but it's a chance he can't waste. In a split-second decision, he puts the black stone in his mouth and swallows it. The sorceress asks him anxiously what he is doing. The green dragon attacks with its tail, but Root blocks the attack with his body and falls in pain. A system message appears before him stating Obsidian Magic Stone absorption complete, followed by another message about skill evolution and removal of restrictions on the guidance skill. Root wonders what removal of restrictions means while information about new and advanced abilities of his skill flows into his consciousness. He realizes in astonishment that this is the true power of the guidance skill after it has been released from its limitations. He looks at the dragon before him and at his terrified companion with eyes full of new determination. He decides to trust his evolved skill completely and chooses a new ability that has appeared to him, Subjugation Procedure Guidance. The skill tells him that it will guide him step by step to defeat the green dragon. With renewed strength and hope, Root declares that he will return alive. As the dragon prepares for another attack, the skill gives him his first combat instruction: dodge the enemy's attack to the left. Confused, Root wonders why the skill is directing him to move towards a pile of rubble on the left, while the path to the right seems safer and easier. As the dragon prepares to unleash a devastating fire attack, Root decides to ignore his logic and place his full trust in his evolved skill. He grabs his companion, whom he calls by her name, Lillian, and pulls her with him towards the rubble. At that moment, the dragon unleashes its attack, completely destroying the right area that Root thought was safe. Root realizes in shock that his skill saved them from certain death, but he immediately notices sharp thorns sticking out of the ground, discovering that the entire room is a deadly trap. As Lillian calls out to him in a state of panic, Root focuses on his skill, waiting for the next step. New instructions appear from Magic Circle Guidance, ordering him to open Lillian's magic circle and activate Archmage Magic Release. Root stands confused by the terms Archmage and Magic Release, but he feels a strange confidence that he can carry out the order. He places his hand on Lillian and activates the skill, and she immediately feels a huge surge of magical power overwhelm her in a way she has never experienced before. Lillian, amazed by this new power, asks what the next step is. The answer comes through Magic Chant Guidance, where the skill explains that it will guide her in reciting a spell to unleash her maximum magical potential against the dragon. Root orders her to repeat his words precisely. Root begins to teach her a powerful chant, word for word, to gather immense power. Root raised his voice in a chant, summoning the spirits of flame to gather and form the breath of hell, while his words harmonized with the rhythm of life itself. And it wasn't long before Lillian repeated after him, her voice intertwining with his, as if they were one echo. Together, they issued a firm command to set him on fire, and to burn him completely until nothing remained of the place but ashes. They unleash a flame breath spell, a massive wave of fire that hits the dragon directly. A huge explosion occurs, surprising Lillian. As the dragon staggers, affected by the attack, the exhausted and terrified Lillian begs him to escape, but Root insists that they can defeat it here and now. He gives her a strange order to attack the ceiling with her magic. Lillian flatly refuses, screaming that she doesn't want to die. At that moment, an image of his sister Rona flashes in Root's mind. Strengthening his resolve, he grabs Lillian and assures her that she will not die and promises her that they will survive if she does exactly as he says. He urges her to trust him and act immediately. Convinced by his insistence, Lillian casts a fireball spell at the ceiling, and they both wait to see the result of Root's mysterious plan. The fireball hits the ceiling, causing a massive rock slide, and the rubble falls on top of the green dragon. When the dust settles, the dragon appears buried under the rubble, and Lillian whispers in disbelief that they have defeated it. But their hope is short-lived as Root's skill activates again, announcing continuation of subjugation procedures. The two are horrified. When the dragon rises from under the rubble, wounded but angrier than before, Lillian, who has exhausted all her magical power, asks Root in despair what they should do. In an unexpected move, Lillian doesn't find Root beside her. When she looks for him, she finds that Root has run away from her, making her think for a moment that he has abandoned her again. Root throws a stone at the dragon to get its attention, then shouts provocatively at it that he was the one who swallowed the black magic stone it was guarding. Root challenges it to catch him if it wants to get the stone back. A dangerous chase begins, and he leads the beast to the designated location. Lillian screams in worry when she finds the green dragon approaching Root. Root dodges the dragon's attacks with perfect skill thanks to the continuous guidance of his skill, and the green dragon falls into one of the traps, falling and being impaled on the sharp thorns, and is finally defeated. After Root lured the beast into the trap, Root was on the verge of collapsing from exhaustion. The final instructions from the skill arrive. Lure the dragon into the thorn trap and make it fall into it. Root successfully executes the plan, and as Lillian runs towards him, worried about him, Lillian almost stumbled and fell. But Root was faster than the moment, so he extended his hand to support her before she fell. A message appears confirming completion of the green dragon's subjugation. With the dungeon boss defeated, Root uses his skill to find the way out. Root's skill tells him that the exit has been opened and directs him to retrieve the magic stone from the dragon's corpse. A passage appears before them from which sunlight flows. Root emerges supporting the exhausted Lillian, and they both feel relieved that they have survived and will finally return home. After a while, Root wakes up to find himself and Lillian in a carriage surrounded by a group of heavily armed knights. A red-haired female knight addresses him by his name. Lillian explains to him that they lost consciousness at the exit of the dungeon, and that these knights were the ones who rescued them. The knight introduces herself as Kairi from the Golden Lion Sword Party, and explains that she and her team came to investigate the dungeon after no adventurer who entered it returned. Kairi greets Root and Lillian with a smile, telling them that she has deduced that they have already cleared the dungeon. Root notices the magic stone he took from the dragon's corpse, and Kairi explains that Lillian has told them everything, expressing her regret for the ordeal they went through. Kairi explains that the presence of an A-rank green dragon in an E-class dungeon explains why no adventurer has returned from it. She and her team express their great admiration for their ability to accomplish this amazing feat and officially invite them to join their party. Lillian whispers to Root that she has kept his skill a secret so that he will not be taken advantage of again. Root politely declines the offer, claiming that he is not that skilled, and Kairi tells him not to worry and that he can think about it after he rests. She offers to take him to his town, which is on their way to the capital. As Root holds the magic stone he got from the dragon, he happily thinks about how this treasure will enable him to easily pay off his debts and rent, which will allow his sister Rona, who, like him, has the shadow user skill that people consider useless, to finally live a normal life. Kairi interrupts his dream to tell him that unstable dungeons where monsters that exceed their classifications appear have become common recently. Her words cause Root to worry as he remembers the recent appearance of a low-ranked dungeon near his town, and he has heard that adventurers entered it, but there has been no news of their success in clearing it. Suddenly, one of Kairi's knights shouts, pointing to the horizon, where thick smoke is rising from a nearby town. Root realizes with horror that this smoke is rising from his town. Meanwhile, in Root's town, Marcus and his team stand before Rona, Root's sister, and lie to her that her brother has died in the dungeon. Marcus apologizes with a well-rehearsed act, claiming that the enemy was much stronger than them and that they couldn't even retrieve his belongings. He adds that a special unit will be sent soon to close the dungeon, and that her brother's body may be found then. Then Marcus moves on to his real goal, reminding her of the death benefits paid to the families of those who die in dungeons. On the pretext that she is in no condition to handle the paperwork, he offers to take care of it himself and only asks her to sign a power of attorney. His sorceress companion thinks slyly that Marcus is a skilled actor, and the other warrior plans to steal the compensation money and flee the town. He asks her about her adventurer father and whether she lives on his pension. Rona confirms that her father was a duelist who fought in different places, and that her brother always sought to emulate him. Marcus presses her again to sign the papers for her brother's sake. Rona feels suspicious of his sweet words and decides to use her special skill to uncover the truth, so she activates her shadow user skill. In Root's town, panic and chaos reign as monsters attack the residents in a sweeping assault, forcing everyone to flee for their lives. Meanwhile, Marcus hears the screams outside and guesses that the monsters have been agitated by the magic stones they stole from the dungeon. While one of his colleagues suggests escaping, Marcus insists that they should go out to fight the monsters as a cover for their plan and urges Rona to quickly sign the papers. But Rona, who has uncovered his lie thanks to her shadow user skill, asks him coldly if he is actually going to a safe place where there are no monsters. Marcus is shocked to discover his plan, and Rona confronts him bravely, accusing him of lying about protecting the town and of killing her brother. Marcus realizes that there is no escape from fighting now that his plan has been exposed and orders his men to destroy the room to make it look like the monsters did it, deciding that they cannot leave her alive after she has learned the truth. At this moment, Root, Kairi, and Lillian arrive in the devastated town. As soon as Root sees the monsters, he screams his sister's name in horror and runs at full speed towards his house. He finds Rona lying on the ground in a pool of her own blood, seriously injured. He rushes to her and hugs her, feeling great relief that she is still breathing, and promises her that he will heal her. Rona happily tells him that she thought he was dead, and Root desperately begs her to stop talking and conserve her strength. She smiles weakly and tells him that Marcus and his team have gotten what they deserve. Then she begins to lose consciousness. Root asks her what she means, but her vision begins to blur. She feels cold, and she calls out to him as if he were far away despite his desperate cries that he is beside her. She loses consciousness completely, and her last words were a plea that he not die. Root screams in pain, wondering what use his powerful skill is if he can't even save his sister. His skill activates to inform him that medical treatment is impossible under these circumstances, but it offers him a special path to survival. He can temporarily extend her life by merging her body and soul with his body and soul. The skill asks him if he wishes to proceed with the survival path guidance. Root immediately agrees, crying, confirming that he will do anything to save her. The skill explains that the green magic stone he obtained from the dragon controls regeneration and symbiosis, making the fusion possible. The magic stone is activated, and a bright light engulfs Rona, beginning the process of merging their souls and bodies together. During the fusion process, Root delves into his sister's consciousness and sees her memories. The moment Rona used her shadow user skill to summon monsters from the shadows that attacked Marcus, and his team materializes before him. Two monsters approach him as he is engrossed in his sister's memories. He sees how they brutally beat her, and a monster directs an attack at him. His anger flares as he realizes that Marcus not only betrayed him and used him as bait, but also dared to lay a hand on his innocent sister. With the fusion complete, the shadow user skill activates within Root himself, and he swears in a blind rage that he will never forgive Marcus for what he did. The scene returns to the town square where Kairi is killing the monsters one by one, and Kairi organizes her knights to secure the different locations. Suddenly, catches sight of Root standing amidst the destruction, apparently unharmed. She asks him to evacuate the area and go to a safe zone, assuring him that they are about to finish subjugating the monsters. But Root, who is looking at a screen that only he can see, tells Lillian that he is now going on a journey to save his sister. Lillian begs him to take her with him, assuring him that she will be of help to him, and he thanks her for her support. Before he leaves, Root decides to take revenge on the Steel Moon Party, and his skill activates to offer him guidance for the subjugation of the Steel Moon Party. 3 months later, in the adventurer city of Delphast, Marcus sits with his now larger team in a tavern celebrating their recent success and mocking the weakness of the local adventurers. Root and Lillian sat at a table near Marcus' team. And as she watched them, it crossed her mind that they had grown in number, yet their behavior still suggested obvious foolishness. Nearby, other adventurers talk about a new challenge, eliminating the legendary shadow web spider, a monster that hunts its prey with invisible threads and has made an entire valley a forbidden zone. One of Marcus's followers hears the conversation and scoffs at the risks, claiming that his leader can defeat the spider in one blow. Then he rudely bumps into a passerby. A huge man rises from another table after punching Marcus's companion for bumping into him and asks Marcus if he is the leader. Those in the tavern recognize him as the leader of the notorious White Wolf's Fong Party. The leader of the White Wolf's Fong Party scolds Marcus for his men's behavior, advising him to discipline them before thinking of facing a legendary monster. Someone whispered that the man's fate would be death if he didn't swallow his pride at this crucial moment. Marcus rose from the table with an arrogant expression and said with a cold, condescending tone that he thought it was time to be summoned. But Marcus attacks the leader and defeats him easily. The leader's team begs him to leave their leader. Then he throws the leader at his team members who tried to defend him and stands victorious as his men chant his name. Lillian realizes that Marcus has drawn immense power from the magic stone and thinks that Root cannot overcome him in a direct confrontation. But Root, with a steady and determined gaze, turns to Lillian, apologizes, and tells her that he needs her help. At that moment, his skill activates to begin the guidance for the subjugation of the Steel Moon. The scene shifts to Marcus and his team traveling in their carriages, talking about having finished all the profitable dungeons and that it is time to leave the town. Someone asks if their next destination is the legendary monster, the shadow web spider, but Marcus rejects the idea and decides to clear any random dungeon before they leave. Marcus boasts that thanks to his new power, he can turn swarms of small enemies into one large target. While they were laughing and talking about collecting their pension, Root and Lillian were watching them. Root and Lillian were driving the carriage that Marcus and his team were in complete silence without anyone noticing their presence. As Marcus's party travels through a narrow pass, one of them wonders if this is the right way to the dungeon that is supposed to be in the mountains. Suddenly, chaos erupts as the team members scream in panic. After invisible threads grab one of their comrades and lift him into the air as he screams in terror, a giant spider appears, and the team realizes that they have entered the shadow web spider's nest. Amidst the panic, someone shouts to go back, and then they spot Root and Lillian. Root and Lillian immediately move away from the carriage. Marcus's expression turns to great relief, and he thanks God that they are alive. Root approaches and apologizes, saying that they were immature in the past. But Marcus responds with arrogance, boasting about the power he has gained thanks to the magic stone, and how his team's numbers have increased, and attributes all the credit to Root. Then, with a feigned smile, he offers to cut off Root's head himself. Root responds coldly, expressing his relief that Marcus is still the same scum, which means he can now crush him without mercy. One of Marcus's men urges their leader to hurry up and crush Root so they can get out of this place. He mocks Root, calling him the useless skill holder, and asks him if he wants them to leave him behind again, this time threatening to tie him up so he can't move. Root notices that the attacker waving his axe is not paying attention to his surroundings. As soon as the man asks, "What did you say?" the spider's threads suddenly wrap around him, lifting him into the air as he screams to be let down. As Marcus's men scream for help as they fall into the spider's traps, Marcus angrily asks Root what he did. Root responds with a confident and calm smile that he did nothing, but he warns them to be careful as this area is the hunting ground of the shadow web spider. Root explains that the place is full of layers of invisible thread traps and reminds Marcus that he and his team were the ones who tried to trap and kill him first. Then, as the image of his injured sister materializes before him, Root's anger flares, and he declares that they will pay for their sin with their lives. The trapped man desperately screams for rescue. The sorceress from Marcus's team steps forward, telling him that she will save him immediately. But as soon as she takes a step, she screams in pain as she discovers that she has fallen into a trap that seals magic. And before she can do anything, the spiders attack and capture her as she screams. The rest of the team members watch the scene in horror, seeing a severed arm fall from one of their comrades who was taken by the spiders. One of them shouts that this is not a joke and that they had nothing to do with it and orders the rest to flee for their lives. Marcus watches his men flee, then turns to Root, who asks him if this is their punishment. With a cunning smile, Marcus raises his hands in surrender, saying that he bets Root has prepared other punishments for them and that he must have planned all of this meticulously. Then he begins to provoke Root, wondering about his sister's name, Rona, and describing her as a nice little sister who cared for her brother, expressing his deep regret for her fate. He adds cruelly that she would not have died if she had been as easy to deceive as her brother. Upon hearing these words, Root draws his sword. Marcus smiles slyly, saying that this is what he wanted as grudges are best settled face to face. Marcus mocks Root for carrying a sword he can't use well and wonders if he thinks cheap amateur tricks will work on him. Then he vows to crush him. Root rushes towards Marcus, laughing insanely, and Marcus shouts that with his current strength, he won't even be able to avenge his sister and calls him a worthless, useless skill holder as he launches a violent attack. In the attack, Root moves calmly. Marcus barely blocks Root's blow, which shocks Marcus. Marcus shouts that it is impossible for Root to have the skill as he was just an amateur in the dungeon, but his movements now are like those of a first-class duelist. Root responds with a firm gaze and vows that he will make Marcus feel true despair. Marcus shouts angrily at him not to get cocky and boasts that after being enhanced by the magic stone, no one can defeat him. Marcus unleashes all his power in a huge luminous attack. Lillian screams Root's name in horror as he takes the direct hit amidst Lillian's astonishment. Marcus suddenly disappears from before her. Suddenly, scene changes to show the leader of the White Wolf's Fong party holding Lillian hostage, threatening Root. The leader declares that he is not the type to be tricked into running into a trap and demands that Root disable the traps and guide them back, or he will kill them both, and told him to choose quickly. The leader was thinking to himself that even if he killed them, he would still be stuck in the trap and become food for the spiders. So his plan was to force Root to guide them to the valley's exit and then eliminate them. As he shouts at Root to hurry up and make his decision, boasting that he cannot be defeated, he threatens to cut Lillian's throat. At that moment, at Root's command, a knight made of shadow appears, attacks the leader, and cuts off his sword-wielding hand, freeing Lillian. The leader stands stunned, wondering what happened and where this ally came from before realizing that what is in front of him is a shadow knight. The magic stone began to weaken gradually after it fell for Marcus, and the energy began to fade from his body. Root advances on the now helpless leader, reminding him that he promised to make him feel the despair and suffering of Rona. Then he throws him to the ground with a blow from his sword. As he lies motionless on the ground, Root picks up the magic stone. The leader sees the giant spider approaching and begins to scream and beg, admitting that he was wrong. As the beast attacks the man, Root reassures Lillian that everything will be all right. In his final moments, the consumed leader screams curses, threatening that his brother will avenge him and make Root regret it, and asks for help as he disappears into the beast's mouth. After Lillian witnessed the horrific scene, she realized that this was the shadow web spider. Root stands after killing Marcus and speaks to the spirit of his sister Rona, telling her that he has avenged her against those who hurt her and swears that he will save her. Lillian calls out to him in alarm, reminding him that they are completely surrounded by spiders. Root turns to face the new threat, and his skill activates to offer guidance for the subjugation of the shadow web spider. Root declares that his revenge is over and that his next mission is to end the legend of this giant spider. Lillian warns Root that the shadow web spiders are surrounding them from all directions. He tells Lillian not to worry because he is there and begins to fight the smaller spiders, but Lillian notices that his attacks have no effect on them. Root acknowledges that they are tough opponents and decides that it is time to use that thing. He takes out the magic stone that was in Marcus's possession, and Lillian immediately recognizes it. Root tells her that Marcus no longer needs it. Root holds the magic stone and feels a tremendous power flowing from it, while his skill guides him to activate the Tears of the Emerald due to enhance his magical power. The spiders launch their attacks from the webs. Using the power of the magic stone, Root unleashes a powerful force saturated with shadow energy and envelopes his sword with it and cuts off the spider's attacks with violent sword strikes. Lillian screams his name as she watches him. Root realizes that to make the most of his ability, he must first strengthen himself. His skill activates to offer him guidance for acquiring dueling skill, an ability that guides and instills the most efficient sequence of experiences, movements, and thought patterns necessary to master dueling directly into his brain and body. Lillian panics, realizing that they are in the shadow web spider's lair and that the place must be full of traps. But Root's guidance skill activates again, drawing them a safe path through the dangerous area. As they follow the path, the Shadow Knight blocks a surprise attack that was aimed at Root. Root expresses his annoyance with the countless invisible threads that are scattered everywhere and is surprised by Lillian's warning of the appearance of another spider. Root orders the Shadow Knight to advance. Meanwhile, Lillian finds herself trapped by a spider, so she screams at it not to come closer and casts a fireball spell. The spell hits the monster directly, but it leaves no trace on it. Lillian calls out to Root, telling him desperately that her attack is of no use at all. Before the spider can pounce on her, the Shadow Knight suddenly appears and kills it with a single attack, saving her life. Lillian tenses up at the sudden appearance of the Shadow Knight. After Lillian looks at her savior and thanks the Shadow Knight with relief, Root calls out to Lillian, telling her that the real battle begins now. At that moment, the giant mother spider arrives, descending from above while her young cling to her back. Root tells Lillian that he will need her help from now on, and she immediately agrees. Root's skill activates again, offering magic circle guidance, an ability that directs the flow of magic in Lillian's body to the optimal path, allowing her to amplify her magical power beyond her limits. Root tells her that her magical power has been released and orders her to attack the mother spider with all her might. Lillian agrees and casts a massive fireball spell, hitting the mother spider with a huge explosion. Lillian thinks she has succeeded and exclaims that what Root did was amazing, but she is shocked when the smoke clears and the mother spider appears completely unharmed from the midst of the flames. Root tells her that this is enough, explaining that the goal was not to harm her. Root reveals his true plan. He only wanted to burn all the spider webs scattered in the area as well as her wings. And with that, after removing all the obstacles, he can now focus on the attack. Lillian stares at the scene in astonishment, whispering that what is happening is unbelievable. Root addresses the mother spider, explaining that he holds no personal grudge against her, but he must eliminate her to achieve his goal. Root rushes towards her with intense focus, unleashing a massive sword strike saturated with shadow power. The blow pierces the giant beast's body, killing it in a single swift attack. Lillian stands stunned, expressing her amazement at his ability to defeat an rank monster with a single blow. Lillian suggests that if they report this achievement to the guild, they will receive a huge reward, but she notices that Root is exhausted and falls to his knees. Root smiles and tells her that this will not happen as he has another goal and will not return to the city. He adds that, in addition, he has obtained a precious treasure. Root extracts from the spider's corpse the violet shadow stone, a rare magic stone that has the ability to conceal any being's presence from the world. Lillian recognizes it immediately and realizes that the spider was using it to make its invisible threads. Root tells Lillian that he will keep the stone as a souvenir, and that their next destination is to meet the person who can save Rona. Lillian is surprised and Root reveals her identity, Verdana, the Witch of the World Tree. Shock fills Lillian's face upon hearing the name, and she reveals that Verdana is her mother. Silence fills the place for a few moments. Lillian tells Root with great fear that her mother is a terrifying person, and that the idea of her lending her power to someone else is absolutely impossible. She begs him to stop here and look for another way. Root refuses, explaining that he used his guidance ability to explore all possible possibilities, and that all the ways that could save his sister ultimately lead to Verdana. Lillian declares, despite her gratitude for saving her life, that she will part with him here if he insists on going to her mother. In a moment of desperation, Root grabs her and begs her not to leave him, admitting that he cannot save his sister without her. Lillian is moved by his plea and wonders to herself why she is so weak to this kind of request. Root thanks her and explains to her that her presence is the only key to communicating with Verdana. Then he asks her, since she is her daughter, why she is so afraid of her. But he tells her that she doesn't have to talk if she doesn't want to. Lillian decides to explain it to him. She begins her story by saying that Verdana gave birth to 3 daughters from the fruit of the world tree to be her successors. The eldest daughter, Elvira, mastered the control of magic as soon as she was born and is nicknamed the Storm Witch for her ability to control the weather and storms. The second daughter, Floria, mastered a rare form of alchemy and is nicknamed the Soul Forging Witch for her ability to create countless golems. Lillian continues her story explaining that she has always heard her sisters' names, Storm Witch and Soul Forging Witch, mentioned in whispers and admiration. She explains that compared to them, her magical power was low and all she could do was use fire element magic. Her memories take her back to 2 years ago. Her older sister, Elvira, was shouting, calling her Lily, and telling her that the wine had run out. Lillian hurried, carrying a large pillow, and promised her older sister that she was coming right away, but she bumped into something and fell. She got up to find her second sister, Floria, standing next to one of her golems, who gently warned her that running without looking ahead is dangerous. Lillian thanked her sister for being worried about her. Elvira shouted again, wondering how long Lillian would make her wait. Lillian apologized and promised to come immediately. Floria approached Lillian and told her that she should not do chores that resemble those of servants. Meanwhile, one of the golems poured wine for Elvira. Elvira took the glass and commented with a sarcastic smile that this golem was more useful than Lily, then added cruelly that perhaps the failure should disappear soon. Lillian seemed deeply affected, but Floria reassured her, telling her not to care what Elvira said, assuring her that she was not a failure. Lillian was moved by her sweet words. Then Floria told her that she had a very important role, which was testing the durability of the golems. Before Lillian could comprehend what was happening, Floria grabbed her hand and dragged her outside, claiming that the space was too cramped inside. Floria threw Lillian to the ground in front of a huge golem. Lillian asked her in pain why she did this. Floria replied that their mother was the only one left in the world tree with them, and it is in the nature of witches to test their new creations. Then she coldly warned Lillian to be careful because she had not taught this golem how to control its strength. The golem attacked Lillian, who began to defend herself. She cast a fireball spell, but it only left a light smoke on the huge golem's body. The two sisters were watching from a distance, with Floria commenting that the ending was good, while Elvira said it was because Lily was too weak. Elvira got excited and asked to fight too. Floria refused, explaining that she had not designed the golem to withstand her sister's firepower. Lillian continued to cast weak fireballs, and Elvira commented on her weak magical power. In the end, the golem grabbed the exhausted Lillian, who could only scream for help from her two sisters. The events of the past continue as Elvira declares that she can no longer contain herself and casts a powerful spell called Summon Thunder Emperor. The massive electrical attack completely destroys the golem and turns it to dust. Floria screams at her sister demanding that she not break her toys, and Elvira replies that she should not make such flimsy golems. Suddenly, an authoritative voice orders them to be quiet. Their mother, Verdana, appears and tells them that playing is allowed, but they must play more quietly and not make a mess in the garden. The two sisters apologize immediately, and Floria promises to clean up the place immediately. Verdana looks at the golem's wreckage and calls it junk, then looks at Lillian and calls her trash and orders them to be disposed of together, declaring that she no longer needs Lillian. After that, the two sisters stand over Lillian, who is lying on the ground. Floria coldly tells her that their mother no longer needs her, then throws her aside. Lillian is overcome with frustration and deep sadness. Floria approaches the shocked Lillian and offers her to be useful for her research one last time. Floria reveals that she has been wanting to try using humans as material for making golems for some time. Lillian is horrified when she looks at the frightening golem. I get when Lillian points out that their mother forbade them from harming humans. Floria replies that their mother called her trash, which means she is not considered human. Elvira hears the idea and finds it amusing and enthusiastically agrees, saying that Lillian might finally become useful if she turns into a golem. The two sisters approach Lillian, telling her that she will be reborn. Lillian completely breaks down, crying and begging them for help and screaming that she doesn't want to die. Her sisters looked at her in silence as she trembled with fear of them, but Elvira suddenly sighs, declaring that she has lost interest. She tells Floria that she was only thinking of her when she suggested the idea, then orders Lillian to go away and disappear now and leaves with her sister. Floria expresses her disappointment as she thought that Lillian could become the strongest golem. The past scene ends with Lillian still kneeling before them, begging for her life, and the story returns to the present where Root and Lillian are sitting next to a carriage. Root comments that her family situation was brutal and complicated. After a moment of silence, he asks her if she will really help him. Lillian declares that she has made her decision, and since Root saved her life, she will help him. Root sees her determination and decides that he must rise to the level of this resolve. He tells her that he will explain everything to her about his goal and abilities, and Lillian enthusiastically agrees, admitting that curiosity was killing her to know. Root begins to explain, stating that his goal is to save Rona and that his abilities are Guidance and Shadow Weaver. He reveals that he merged Rona, who was dying, into his body using the power of the Green Dragon's magic stone. Through this fusion, he was able to absorb her ability. Lillian asks if the Shadow Knight is Rona's ability, and Root explains that the ability is hers, but not entirely. He explains that the original Shadow Weaver ability only allowed her to manipulate her shadow, and he considered it a non-combat and useless skill. But he adds that his own guidance ability is what taught him the true way to use Shadow Weaver. Root continues his explanation, stating that the shadow can change its shape into anything. By imagining their father, who was a duelist, he was able to create the Shadow Knight. He adds that Rona's gentle personality might make it difficult for her to imagine such things. Root says that by using the guidance ability to direct the Shadow Knight's actions, the knight can attack enemies independently. Lillian expresses her amazement, describing it as a fighting style that only Root could master. But Root mentions that there is a downside, which is that he was not able to inherit the entire Shadow Weaver ability. When Lillian asks about the nature of the guidance ability, which she thought was limited to finding safe paths, their conversation is interrupted by the appearance of a great horned monster. Root sees this as perfect timing and decides to explain his ability to Lillian practically, especially since the road to Verdana will be fraught with danger. His skill activates Subjugation Procedure Guidance Target, Great Horned. The skill orders him to use Shadow Weaver to evade the opponent's attack. Root explains to Lillian that this monster specializes in charging with its horn, and that its hide is so tough that it cannot be scratched with a normal blow, but its attack is linear and simple. Root dodges the monster's attack, and his skill directs him to activate Shadow Weaver and attack the charging monster's feet simultaneously. Root explains that the monster cannot change its course while charging, and that attacking its front legs will make it lose its balance and easily topple over. Then Root explains the final step. Unlike its tough hide, its belly skin is soft and can be easily pierced with a sword. His skill directs him to attack the exposed weak point, and Root kills the monster. After the battle, Root tells Lillian that he will now explain the guidance skill to her properly. Lillian enthusiastically agrees to listen to his explanation. He explains that it all started when he swallowed the magic vortex featherstone in the past, which led to the evolution of his ability. He then shows her the skill activation window that he usually hides from others, explaining that this is the home screen of the guidance ability. Root continues his explanation, stating that this is the guidance ability after its evolution, as the amount of information it can provide has increased. He gives examples explaining that magic chant guidance can guide him to a powerful spell, just like when they fought the dragon, and that magic circle guidance can unleash a person's latent magical power by manipulating the flow of magic within their body. Lillian realizes that this is the reason she was able to use such powerful magic, and she credits Root. But Root corrects her, explaining that the skill only unleashes existing potential and does not create power out of thin air. He assures her that the immense power she displayed was her own, and that she possesses the magic of an archmage inherited from her mother, the Witch of the World Tree. Root firmly tells her that she is not trash, and that her mother Verdana's magic is inherited within her. Lillian is deeply moved by his words and smiles with tears in her eyes. Lillian asks if the guidance ability was also the one that told him that Verdana could heal Rona, and Root confirms it. Lillian is amazed by the skill's flexibility, but Root explains that it is not as versatile as it seems. He describes it more accurately as a divine revelation like analytical ability. Lillian is amazed at his description of the skill. It analyzes the environment and factors that he himself might not notice and then guides him to the optimal solution as if it were a revelation. Root admits that there is no guarantee that Verdana will be able to save Rona, but his skill confirms that if there is someone who can do it, it is Verdana. He reiterates that to reach her, Lillian's presence as her daughter is essential. With deep gratitude, Lillian tells him that although she has always been called trash, if she can be of use to him, she will gladly help him because he saved her life. Root sincerely thanks her and tells her that he is indebted to her. As they travel in a carriage, Lillian excitedly exclaims that she can see the world tree. Root explains that although it is visible, it still takes half a day to reach the two. Comment on the immense size of the tree, and Lillian mentions that it is over 2,000 years old and still growing. Suddenly, Root notices smoke rising on the horizon. Lillian realizes with horror that there is supposed to be a village in that direction. The scene shows a village being attacked by a huge and strangely shaped golem. A man and a woman from the local population try to fend it off. The golem attacks the man, but he manages to dodge the attack. The man attacks with his sword, but it has no effect on it. The woman casts a powerful fireball spell. The man wonders if she succeeded, but the golem emerges from the smoke unscathed. Then a familiar female voice is heard commenting that this magic has already been tested for durability. The golem speaks in Floria's voice, confirming that the villagers' attacks will be futile. The woman asks him his purpose, and the golem replies that he does not intend to threaten the human way of life, but only needs a few humans who use magic to become material for making golems. At that moment, Root intervenes and shoots a magic arrow that hits the golem. The golem complains of the annoying pain caused by others interfering in its work, while Root's skill identifies the target as just a clay doll and not the real enemy. Floria, who is watching through the golem, notices Root and calls him a worthless insect for daring to interfere. The golem rushes towards Root with incredible speed, and Lillian screams to warn him, but Root tells her not to worry. Root easily dodges the attack and cuts the golem with a single blow. Floria, through the golem, comments that she didn't expect him to be able to split it in half so easily, while the golem regenerates its arm in the form of tentacles. Then Floria addresses Root directly, telling him that he looks like good material. Root coldly replies that playing with dolls is not his hobby. Floria expresses her disappointment, saying that she thought they could become good friends. As she speaks, the golem launches a surprise attack from behind Root, and Lillian screams to warn him. The golem stops at the sound of Lillian's voice and turns towards her. Floria appears from inside the golem and says, "Excuse me," then pretends to have seen Lillian by chance. She approaches her with feigned happiness. Wondering if Lillian has returned to her, Floria approaches Lillian and apologizes for what happened that time, claiming that she regretted her actions. Lillian is moved and whispers, "Sister Flo." Floria's face suddenly changes to a sinister expression, and she tells Lillian that she can now turn her into a more magnificent golem before laughing and saying that she was just kidding. Floria continues her manipulation, putting her arm around Lillian and telling her that she has been feeling regretful the whole time since the day she left. Floria apologizes to her, and as Lillian begins to believe her, Floria reveals the true nature of her regret. She is worried that the existence of a useless person like Lillian in the world might harm her sister's reputation. Then with a cold look, she tells her that her real regret is that she didn't kill her properly at that time. Root stands up to Floria, telling her sternly that he and Lillian have no time to play her games. Floria responds with a feigned smile, expressing her surprise, and says that she thought he would have plenty of time as long as he was hanging out with trash like Lillian. Lillian feels guilty and apologizes, but Root tells her not to. Then he turns to Floria and tells her that if she is unable to see Lillian's value, she is nothing but a fool. This insult angers Floria. Root attacks the golem again and cuts it, but he tells Lillian that the golem is not the real enemy. Floria scoffs at him, reminding him that golems can be revived again and again, but she is surprised when the golem collapses and does not get back up. Root explains that he used magic circle guidance to identify the flow of magic to the golem and cut it off, preventing it from regenerating. Root tells Floria that she is the one who seems to be forgetful and reiterates that he has no time for her games. Floria screams at him in anger and orders him to be silent. In a fit of rage, Floria summons a new, huge, and terrifying golem from the ground and vows that this magnificent golem will mince them. The giant golem attacks, and Lillian asks Root if he can neutralize it as he did with the previous one. Root admits that his strength alone is not enough to stop the movement of this giant golem. He asks Lillian for help and urges her to unleash her magic to blow it up with a very large attack. As Lillian prepares, Root suddenly shouts for her to stop. He has noticed someone trapped inside the golem's core. Root comments on her sister's sick sense of humor. Floria's voice speaks, objecting to being called sick, and claims that she is merciful, and that there is no greater joy than to be alive and used as a golem for her. Lillian remembers her previous plan to use humans as material for golems. Root changes the plan and tells Lillian that he will save the person trapped inside the golem. And immediately after that, she must deliver the final blow with her attack. Lillian objects, saying that she cannot attack alone, but Root encourages her, reminding her that she has already unleashed her magic twice, and assures her that she can now do it without him. Root rushes towards the golem using his shadow ability. The Shadow Knight emerges and succeeds in cutting off the golem's hand. Floria watches the scene with admiration, commenting on his unusual ability. The golem begins to regenerate, but it takes on a new and more monstrous form. Floria smiles and declares that this is the perfect durability test for this golem. The transformed golem attacks, and the Shadow Knight blocks it. Root fights his way through its violent attacks using his shadow skill. Root succeeds in reaching the woman he saved from inside the core. Then he shouts at Lillian that her turn has come and orders her to destroy the golem. But Lillian freezes in place, overcome by years of self-doubt, and screams that she can't do it and that it's impossible for her. As Root protects the unconscious woman, he continues to encourage Lillian, asking her to remember the feeling of magic flowing through her body. From a distance, Floria scoffs and wonders what trash like Lillian can do. Root shouts again, reminding Lillian that she has the magic of an archmage inside her. Lillian summons her courage and whispers to herself that she can do it. Floria continues to insult her, ordering her to act like trash and stay in her place without moving. But Root's words, "You are not trash," echo in Lillian's mind and finally break the psychological chains that have bound her. Lillian screams, "I am not trash," and a huge magical force erupts from her body in the form of flames. Lillian begins to chant the powerful spell that Root taught her. Root encourages her, assuring her that she is already an archmage. Floria stands shocked, wondering where this immense magical power is coming from. Lillian completes the spell and orders the flames to burn everything and turn it to ash. Then she unleashes a flame breath attack. After casting the spell, Lillian stands panting with exhaustion and declares forcefully that she will not let anyone call her trash again. When the smoke clears, Floria appears angered by the explosion that destroyed her golem. She looks at Lillian in disbelief and asks her what this means. Root explains to Floria that what she just saw is Lillian's true power. He explains that her body may have been trying to control this immense magical power that she was born with to prevent it from getting out of control, which is why she appeared weak before. Floria rejects this explanation in anger and screams at Root to shut up and not talk nonsense. She hysterically insists that if she, her older sister, says that Lily is trash, then she is. Lillian is hurt by her sister's words, but she finally stands up to her. She begs her to stop and declares that she is no longer her doll. She tells her sister that she is here of her own free will and warns her that if she gets in her way, she will not hesitate to confront her even if she is her sister. After confronting Lillian, Floria calms down for a moment and turns around. She apologizes, claiming that she has gone too far and adds that as an older sister, she should be happy about Lillian's growth. She approaches her sister and tells her that she is glad she has grown up. Lillian is moved and whispers her sister's name. But in the next moment, the murderous intent returns to Floria's eyes, and she pounces on her, shouting that she will tear her body apart and turn her into the strongest golem herself. Root intervenes in time and blocks her attack. He tells Lillian that they must eliminate Floria, and Lillian reluctantly but firmly agrees. Floria scoffs at the idea that they can defeat her and tells them not to get ahead of themselves just because they defeated a simple golem. Then she rushes towards them and directs an attack at him, but Root dodges it. At a signal from Root, he and Lillian launch a joint attack. Lillian casts a huge fireball that completely engulfs Floria. Lillian screams excitedly, believing that she has succeeded, but Floria emerges from the flames without a scratch and sarcastically asks her sister if she really thought that such an attack could harm her. Lillian is frustrated, but Root tells her that he did not expect the attack to succeed. The attack was just a diversion. The Shadow Knight suddenly appears behind Floria and delivers a powerful blow. Floria complains that a surprise attack is not befitting of a knight. The Shadow Knight dissolves into a mass of dark shadows that wrap around Floria and bind her. As she struggles, unaware of what is happening, she discovers the bitter truth: they have escaped. In a fit of rage, Floria's body begins to transform, and she grows monstrous arms and legs. She screams in a frenzy, demanding that they come out of their hiding place so she can tear them to pieces. Nearby, Root, Lillian, and the rescued woman are hiding. The woman expresses her concern that they will be found, but Root reassures her that it will take some time. The partially transformed Floria stands on the roof of a house searching for them. She assumes that they have not gone far, then she spots them. She comments bitterly on Lillian's poor taste in men, describing Root's tactic of a surprise attack followed by an escape as despicable. Then, in a glacial tone, she announces her next plan. She will gouge out Lillian's eyes so she can't see and slit her throat so she can't talk back. Floria declared that golems do not need a will of their own and that Lillian should be just her doll. But before she could find them, a volley of magic arrows pierced her body, knocking her to the ground. Root and Lillian looked to see the source of the attack, and Root recognized the knights of the royal capital. The knight commander confirmed that the location of the soul forging which had been identified. The transformed Floria rises and pulls an arrow from her body. Wondering who the attackers are, a blonde female knight orders the archers to use the Flame Emperor spell. The archers prepare and fire a volley of flaming arrows that hit Floria. Immediately after, the knight commander uses the Thunder Emperor spell and rushes towards Floria. Floria calls him a pathetic human and curses his cunning. It turns out that all of this was part of Root's plan, as his skill had guided him. The skill had revealed that the royal capital knights were approaching to rescue Alsace and had guided him to create an opportunity and hide. The skill predicted that Floria would climb to a high place to look for them, which would expose her to the knights who could then subdue her. The knight commander engages Floria and cuts her in half with a single attack. Floria is annoyed and uses her tentacles to attack the knight commander. But before she can touch him, she is eliminated by a powerful ice attack that shatters her. After she is killed, the female knight who cast the ice arrow realizes that the body she destroyed was not the real body of the soul forging witch and calls Floria a monster. The knight commander confirms her suspicions, explaining that it was just a golem. This worries the female knight, and she wonders why the witch is attacking people near the villages. The blonde female knight informs her that there are many reports of damage caused by both the storm witch and the soul forging witch in the neighboring towns. The female knight finds this strange. The commander points out that although the World Tree witches are sharp-tempered, they do not usually attack as long as no one approaches the World Tree. The female knight adds that the World Tree contains valuable and useful resources for humans, which is what attracts adventurers to it, such as medicinal herbs that can cure any disease. But the tree is heavily protected by the witches, and any adventurer who tried to break in the past met a tragic end. The commander concludes his speech by mentioning the local proverb that sums up the situation. Watch the World Tree from afar. Fear sleeps as long as you do not get too close. As they hide, Lillian tells Root that her mother's teachings have always forbidden them from going down to the villages. She wonders in confusion what could have happened in the World Tree to make her sister Floria act this way. Meanwhile, the Royal Capital Knights discuss the situation. The commander mentions that they have lost contact with their colleague Alsace, who went to investigate recently, and they believe that he had fallen into the witch's hands. The blonde female knight decides that they cannot allow any more casualties and declares that they will subdue the World Tree Witch. Root interrupts them, asking them if they are looking for someone named Alsace and introduces them to the person he saved. The female knight uses healing magic on Alsace. The female knight wakes up and thanks the female knight for her help. When Alsace woke up, she asked the female knight what had happened, and the latter simply pointed to Root and Lillian, explaining that they were the ones who had told her the story. When her eyes met Root and Lillian's, some faint memories that had crossed her mind returned. Then she gets up and officially introduces herself as Alsace. Root and Lillian thank her again for saving him, and they introduce themselves to him. The female knight tells her what the witches did during her captivity. The scene shifts to the past where the two sisters stand in front of a golem carrying the female knight Alsace in its core. Elvira asks her sister who the girl is, and Floria replies that she found her in a nearby village. Elvira recognizes her armor and realizes that she belongs to a survey team of the Royal Capital Knights. Elvira mocks Floria for her ignorance of anything outside of making golems. Elvira explains that the Royal Capital Knights are a symbol of human pride, and that the presence of this knight here means that the humans are planning to attack them. Floria is surprised, but Elvira seems pleased with the idea and vows to turn every one of them into her dolls. Elvira warns her not to underestimate the knights, but Elvira notices that their mother, Verdana, is in pain. Elvira approaches the World Tree, where their mother appears merged with the trunk and unable to speak clearly. Elvira mocks her and realizes that her mother has already reached her limit. Floria notices that the World Tree, although it looks normal from the outside, has begun to rot from the inside. Elvira coldly suggests that they abandon the dying tree and move to live in the royal capital. Floria reminds her of their promise to their mother, but Elvira scoffs at the idea of a promise. The promise is revealed in a final scene from the past where Verdana was ordering her daughters, "Do not leave the World Tree," and attacking humans creates conflict. And the conflict will eventually become a great spark that will burn our roots. The memories continue as Floria reminds her sister Elvira of their promise to their mother. She explains that their mission is to continuously monitor the World Tree rooted in this land, and that they cannot leave. Elvira expresses her extreme boredom with this life. Floria hits the World Tree in anger. Floria insists that their mission as guardians of the World Tree requires them to avoid unnecessary conflicts. She adds that this was only true when the World Tree was alive and well, which means the situation has changed. With a demonic face, Floria proposes a horrific plan to slaughter all the inhabitants of the royal capital and then take the capital as their new sanctuary. Elvira smiles slyly and agrees to the plan, admiring her sister. Meanwhile, the captive female knight, Alsace, was hearing everything from inside the golem. She realizes that she must tell the others about their plan, but she cannot move her body. Elvira suggests that since the survey team has arrived, the Royal Capital Knights will surely attack, and they decide to start by eliminating them. Floria adds that she will need more golems, and therefore will have to harvest more humans who possess magic. As they prepare to begin, Floria remembers something important, which is the need to get rid of that boy first. The memories end, and Alsace has finished telling what happened. Everyone is shocked to hear about the witch's plan to slaughter the inhabitants of the capital, and that the World Tree itself is rotting. The blonde female knight declares that they do not have much time and decides to launch a surprise attack before the witches are ready. Root sees this as an opportunity, especially if Verdana is losing her strength. Root steps forward and asks the knights to take him and Lillian with them, assuring them that they will be of help. After a quick glance at Alsace, the blonde female knight agrees and welcomes them to the mission. Root and Lillian look towards the World Tree, and Root thinks with concern that if the tree withers, he will not be able to save Rona, but he resolves, believing that there is a way and a path to success.